Hello, hello. It is the one and only 5D Transformations, Pyramidian Coaching, and I'm back. And in this video, I want to talk about a very special story, man. And what makes this story so special is it involves my spiritual journey. When I talk about my coaching and just working with my clients, I just want to let everyone know that I go through this path as well. I walk through this path also, and I go through my own experiences. And to be honest with you, I started off very skeptical. I was not somebody that came in hook, line, and sinker when it came to higher levels of information. I was hoping that there was more information out there. But first and foremost, I started off in the world. I say up to about 20 years old, I was just living life. You know what I mean? Like everyone else, I didn't have any concepts of spirituality. I was just uh, a Christian. You know what I mean? I was raised a Christian. Went to school, learned about science, and kind of was battling between the two, figuring out what the truth was, but not really sold by either. Um, but they both presented great points, and I always kept my Christian values. I prayed, and just you hope that there's more. You hope that there's a force out there, but the actual story of the Bible, it didn't give enough of the picture to me. I'm a very rational person, so I was definitely looking at it from a perspective of certain things wasn't adding up. So I stayed balanced. The one thing I did do right is I let my heart lead me. I didn't let indoctrination, which is in documents, in doc. Like that's what happens is when you let documents, you know, run your form of thinking. Um, in doctrines, I try to focus on my heart and what was real. Not just what I was reading and just going with the societal pressure. But at the time, there was no guidance when it came to spiritual matters. You know what I mean? And so, one of the best ways that kind of guide people to higher levels of information, and that's kind of how it worked out for me, was just trying to get into self development. At the age of 21, I got a book. As soon as I turned 21, my mother had got me a Kindle for Christmas. And this was obviously years ago because the Kindle was like new, you know what I mean? It was popping. I mean, it probably wasn't new, but it was new enough, you know what I mean? And I read the Kindle. Well, I grabbed the Kindle and I had a free credit to get a book. So I'm sitting here looking for a book, and I look at, like, let me look up something for self development, because at this point in my life, I started to value like learning new perspectives, about money. I remember I was doing moving jobs, and I had found this book. We had did a moving job for this person, and they gave me this book called what do you call it? It was called a Rich Dad Poor Dad. That book, a lot of people know that book, but it was like a whole booklet set. Like I could tell that they bought, like when the Rich Dad Poor Dad came out, they bought the whole, $1,000 plus package, because they told us like, yeah, this was worth like a lot of money, but we don't need it now. So they hooked us up with that. So little things like that made me think like, yo, let me learn how to get more money. I read the book. It was showing me different aspects, the person who has the job, the person who starts a business, the person who invests. Like it was breaking down different things about wealth. So I was just getting into learning, and I saw that book. It was called The Untethered Soul. And I got a video on the channel where I talk about that book, one of the greatest books I've read in my life. To this day, it's the first book I recommend to my students. It's the first book I recommend to anybody, you know what I mean, whether you work with me or not. And, or my clients, whoever I work with. That book, it blew my mind. And there was one passage in that book that forever is one of the most powerful passages. And I might not say it perfect, but essentially it said, it is best to, you know, look down at your problems rather than being lost in them. Like a yogi sitting atop, looking down at all of your problems rather than being down there with your problems, something along those lines. And I remember for some reason that line blew my mind, because during that time, I never understood the concept of separating myself from my mind and my problems in my mind. I was always surface level with my problems, stressing out, worrying about certain things, a variety of different things just going through life. And I started to see like, oh, wait, so there's a separation. And it was teaching in the book, stop trying to, block your problems, or essentially imagine you got a splinter in your arm. Instead of pulling the splinter out, you create bubble. You know what I mean? You put something to cover it, and then you don't want that to get messed up. So you create a bubble to live in so nobody touches that one wound. And that's the kind of situation it talked about in terms of trying to do all these things to, protect yourself, when really it's all about, you know, letting go and creating that separation from the things that are going on in your mind, because the reality is they're not that serious. It also touched on that voice in your head. It was the first book where I read that explained that the voice in your head is not you. It's programs running. It's what your mom told you, what you learned growing up, what your teacher might have said, what your coach might have said, what you might have experienced when you were young, what you might have experienced in an embarrassing moment. It's so many situations that are programmed in our minds. And it taught us to separate yourself from that so that you can access the true voice, essentially. So now I'm starting to really, that book blew my mind. Now I'm like, oh, wow. So now I'm learning more and more that knowledge is the key, because knowledge is what's allowing me to be at a whole nother level in my life. It gave me a feeling I didn't get from anything else in my life. It showed me that, oh, wait, if I read something or learn a piece of information, it could shift my whole experience of life. It could shift the way I present myself to the game of life. So I started reading everything, learning everything. I started getting the money and success. I'm like, all right, I'm trying to be a millionaire. I started getting into spirituality, learning about different spiritual concepts. But my goal initially at that point was just to be successful. So I remember I was listening to podcasts where they're interviewing different millionaires and successful people. And the funny thing about it is, as I'm studying these millionaires and these successful people, I'm watching this podcast every day. I'm learning stuff every day. I became obsessed. I'm talking about obsessed with all the information I could possibly get between, I'd say, about 21 to 23. Those 2 years, I was going hard all night, all day. Audible audiobooks, YouTube, motivational inspiration. I ran across every motivational, inspirational person you could think of during that time. And I'm absorbing all the info, learning the game, about men and women, the relationship dynamics, health, wealth, just all that type of stuff. Things that people have gone through in life that were way older than me. And what I found, though, is they throw gems in there. It wasn't all just about money. A lot of these guys, there were spiritual concepts that they utilized to get to that level of success. And those were sprinkled on to me. And I was like, what's that? What's that spiritual concept? Oh, who's this person? So I'm learning these spiritual concepts, right? And I already read the book, The Untethered Soul. So I'm building familiarity. So now I'm starting to get more into spirituality. And now I'm starting to study more spiritual concepts, like like the law of attraction, right? That's kind of getting me into it early on. The law of attraction, understanding that there is something called universal laws, or there's laws that can help you improve in life. Law of attraction itself was very interesting to me. I'm hearing things like your vibration, the law of vibration, these different things. Now I'm starting to study more and more and more. So then I start getting real deep, and I start finding like spiritual teachers, and I find some very powerful spiritual teachers on YouTube. And the way I am, I delve very deep. So I found some high level spiritual teachers that were kind of underground. I started learning a lot of spiritual, like deep spiritual stuff. And I was really enjoying that, because, it started to bring the full picture to me about, religion. And all right, I'm seeing the bigger picture now. It's not just the little things they told me when I was in school, and that's all I knew, or that my parents told me. I'm starting to learn deeper concepts. And a lot of it is bending my mind, but I like it at this point, and I'm still piecing it together. It feels like a puzzle. All right, so now this is where everything happened right here. And I know this was I had to bring y'all with me. So now I'm doing deep knowledge now. I'm studying a lot of stuff, right? And I just was about to turn 23. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember I'm looking up NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And I think I was looking it up just to learn different things about NLP, because I found a guy that was teaching NLP, and it was teaching you how to program your mind and become more successful by doing certain techniques. Like, for example, I could say, I feel success in my arm. Like every time I touch my arm, I just feel successful. Now you're programming your arm to be successful. And then it also can work with people, neurolinguistic programming. There's different things you can do. Look that up on your own. That's another subject. So it ends up taking me to this video where it's these people talking, and it's the news. They're showing how Fox News programs people, right? And this video is still out, but it talks about how they use certain sigils and signals and stuff like that to program people on the show, like to get the person who's watching under a spell. And they broke down every single thing bit by bit of them debating people and them creating certain frames and gaslighting and doing essentially it was very weird. It was almost like I don't want to say like witchcraft, right? Because that sounds a little spooky. I don't want to make it weird, but essentially that's what it was. Like they're essentially bending reality and like getting you to, like a person be saying a good point, then they cut them off. And then they'd be like, look, they do certain things like you don't even make sense. And I started to see the manipulation. I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like the manipulation is crazy. They broke down every single bit of the manipulation. So I watched this video and my mind is blown. I'm like, wow, like this is real. They're really manipulating and creating this, mind control is what they're really focused on. Mind control. The way that they mind control the narrative, they take over the narrative to create this narrative. A person might be coming on the show to talk about, world health and trying to improve health. And once they leave that interview with whoever the host was at Fox, I think it was, I forgot, he's still there. That guy is, everybody, just the news in general is kind of sick. Fox News is crazy. It's sick, but they all are. Anyways, I think it was I forgot his name, whatever. So boom. So underneath that video, I see a video from this guy named Mark Passio, and he talks about, it's called like, I forgot what it was called. It was called like the New Age Deception or something like that. And the video was like 5 hours for part 1. And then part 2 was like 3 hours. So I'm looking at this like, all right, I'm not about to watch this whole thing. Matter of fact, I think I clicked it and the dude it's this guy with a ponytail talking in a presentation. He's just talking, but everything he's saying is hitting. And I'm like, I look down, I'm like, oh damn, this is 5 hours. I'm not about to watch this whole thing, but let me just watch it for now. I tell you, man, that man was dropping so much heat. I could not stop watching. I probably started watching the video at like 10 o'clock at night. It was like 3 at night. I finished the whole thing. I couldn't stop watching it. Then I woke up in the morning and started part 2. And I tell you, that video blew my mind, right? So look, so this is where my spiritual awakening happened. I'm mind blown. I'm watching the video. He gets to this part where he talks about the brain. And he talks about there's 3 parts of the brain, right? And I've heard this before. So I was already familiar with this. I was already in school at the time for applied sciences. I got a bachelor's in applied sciences. And it was in from UMD, shout out UMD. It was sociology, concentration psychology. So I already ran across, and I'm also, as you all know, MBTI is one of my specialties. So that's a side thing that I learned very intently. So I was very familiar with psychology concepts, right? So he goes in a basic form of, science when we talk about the brain, right? This is how we kind of dumb it down for people to understand. You have the reptilian brain, you have the mammalian brain, you have the neofrontal cortex. The reptilian brain is the brain stem. It's the part of the brain that everyone has, including animals. It's your fight or flight. It's your survival part of your brain. It's not thinking of deep things. It's trying to eat, survive, all animals have a reptilian brain, hence the word reptilian, right? Then we have the mammalian brain, which a lot of animals have a mammalian aspect of their brain as well. The mammalian brain is the part that allows us to be, collaborative, work together, come together, right? It's the part of us that begins to show kind of like compassion, teamwork skills, things of that nature. It's not just me and my survival. I'm in a shared environment. Boom. Then we got the neofrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that we've developed over time. You know what I mean? And that's where you get the intuition, the vision, the bigger picture, being able to see, systems on a bigger level and things of that nature. that separate us from primates and the rest of the animals out there. So boom, I'm learning that. Now here's what the part that blew my mind, right? This is the part that blew my mind. Now I was someone who's already familiar with MBTI. I already knew the concept of thinking and feeling, right? There's people who are thinking dominant, people who are feeling dominant, but we both think and feel. And then we have intuition and sensing. Intuition is, you're being able to imagine, seeing the bigger picture, you know what I mean? Seeing the wide view, being able to predict what's going to happen, you know what I mean? Based on things from the past, having that big picture perception, coming up with ideas. Sensing is on the ground. It is one of our primal functions. Is what's in front of you. It's paying attention to what's here. It's focused on the present, how to maximize what's around us. You know what I mean? It's more so boots on the ground versus being in the clouds. It's on the ground. It's your five senses, right? So that was that. So I always knew there was a duality, but I knew I wasn't intuitive, and I knew I was a feeler, a little more than a thinker, right? A little bit. I was a feeler a bit more than a thinker, and that used to bother me because I used to feel as though, man, I don't have the right, the thinking at a level of a lot of the dominant thinkers, and the dominant thinkers are the ones who are generally your scientists and in the STEM fields and things like that. And I'm thinking your sensors are more so looking at what's practical. So I'm like, man, I'm over here with these intuitive ideas and these feeling like something's right. And I was like, yo, like, dang, maybe I don't really have the best view on the truth. You know what I mean? So I would always try to stay balanced with my perspectives because my feeling in my heart would be saying, yo, this is the truth. My intuition would be saying this is the truth. But I'd be like, yo, I'm an intuitive though. Really the sensors and thinkers probably have a better idea of what's reality. And I'm probably the one bringing just these ideas and these based on what I feel. And that's not accurate, right? So I used to always feel conflicted about that. So here's what blew my mind. And shout out to anybody out there that's intuitive, that's a feeler, or even if you're a thinker or a sensor, it's going to help you when I tell you this. What he said that blew my mind is he said, what's happening is science is trying to, I'm summarizing this, right? I recommend you watch it for yourself, right? He says science is polarizing you toward your left brain, because you got your right and your left brain. He broke that down as well. The right is the emotion, the creativity, the intuitive elements. It's like the feminine energy aspect of your brain. It's more of the chaos. It's more of the, but that's really where things aren't as logical. But that's where the creativity exists. Then you got that's the right brain. Sorry about that. The right brain is where you got the creativity, all of that. Then you got the left brain. The left brain is the logical stuff, the math, the hard sciences, singular lines. You know what I mean? Black and white, right? Imagine that the right brain is where the color exists, the creativity, the spectrum, the depth of experience. And then the left brain is focused on the numbers, the black and white. It's like the outline, it's the structure. Everything looks structured through the left brain. The left brain naturally structures everything. So, boom. So, but he explained it where we're in a society where you have the scientists, the ones that are running the society, are left brain dominant, and they have the religion of scientism, where everything is logical. The creative elements don't matter. The spiritual aspects don't exist. The only thing that exists is what's physical. And I realize that's where your sensors and your thinking dominant aspect comes from, right? It comes from that side. So that's what they view as reality, and they disregard the other side, and they view it as nonsensical. And he said they're failing because they're polarized towards one side. Then they said you got the right brain, people who are right brain dominant and polarized. And these are your super religious people, where everything is just based on their religion. There's no logic to it. There's no there's no science really related to it. It's just faith and just believe it. These people are very polarized. If you don't believe in a religion, you're going to hell. And they're just as dismissive as the scientism, and they both are polarized. And what he said was the truth of the matter is that it's in the middle. The truth is you need to combine both. You need to take the science element and you need to take the religious spiritual element, and you bring them together. hence spirit science, right? And that's where we're moving toward, right? But he explained that when you merge, and what I realized in that moment is when I merge my thinking with my feeling, when I merge my intuition with my sensing, then that's when you get the full picture of what's going on. You can't be polarized toward either side, because if you're polarized toward either side, you're missing the picture. And when that happened, man, oh my gosh, I felt like my whole mind, I felt like I put the final piece right on the puzzle. Boom. And my mind just went, all my power came back to me. I felt all this power come into my body because the whole time I was always staying very rational to counter my feelings, to keep my feelings in check. So I realized that I was extremely balanced with the way I was seeing things because I always was developing my thinking to be stronger because I was insecure about the feeling element of myself. And I was trying to balance the sensing side with my intuition and realize that that's the perfect balance. And by having both, then you have the perfect yin and yang, which allows you to now move through life with power on a whole different level. That's where you get the spiritual, that's where you evolve. And I swear, I think I had a Kundalini awakening, whatever you call it. Like my mind just, the gates open. So once that happened, everything melted. All the illusions that I dealt with melted. And at that point, I realized that there were no rules, right? I realized that all my illusions broke. And this was for about a week. And I'm telling you, for that week, I was a mastermind on a level like nobody's ever seen. If I would have took any kind of IQ test, whatever, I was solving problems. I was solving everything to the point where people were like, yo, this dude, what's going on? This dude's like a genius right now. Even when it came to the moving job, I was figuring out how to move everything. I had super power strength. I had extra sensory perception. Like my strength was crazy. I felt so powerful. I could tell nobody was trying to mess with me. I felt like if I would have punched somebody, I would have probably damn near killed them with one punch. I had this level of energy behind me that was so powerful. I felt like I could fly. I literally asked my homie who was an extroverted sensor. He was a sensory type of person, right? He wasn't very intuitive. And I was like, you ever wish you could fly? Because I just felt like I could fly. Like I was like, bro, I'm ready to just take off. And he was like, man, I feel like that every day. But in that moment, I was like, wow. Honestly, I realized there was no rules. Even to the point where like I get on the metro, which is the train in our area, and I remember I got off the metro and I didn't even believe in paying for anything. Like there were no rules. I realized that rules were fake. They were all made up. And I remember there was a guy when I was walking out. I didn't walk out trying to hide or sneak. I just literally just walked straight out. And he was like, hey, excuse me, sir, excuse me. And I was just like, this doesn't even exist. And this person can't do anything. No, and he didn't. Nobody could do anything. I had complete dominion of my environment, my experience, because I was completely aligned. My power was just massive, and it lasted for about a week. And when I started to come down from this, and also it was little things like I'm not gonna lie, women were extremely attracted to me for some reason. Like it was crazy. Like I was so magnetic, without trying. I didn't even want to be bothered, and women were just coming left and right. It was something about my energy that people could just feel it. And then it got trippy because my birthday hit, and I'll never forget. I remember I went on Yahoo, and it had some like astrology thing, like, oh, on July 28th, if it's your birthday, this is what you do. So I clicked it, and it described what was going on, and it described it so perfect. That's when it clicked to me that astrology was real, and it started to trip me out because the spiritual world was leaking in so much into my physical world. I wasn't ready yet. It was my first time, and it tripped me out. So now I go right after reading that astrology thing, I'm just fried. Like my brain is sensitive now because it's like reality so melted, it's like it's starting to go like this. And I remember they called me over to, so it was my birthday, right? Now it was another intern. I was an intern at the time. there was another intern there, and both our birthdays were like a week apart. It was crazy. So they threw like a surprise party, right? So they bring us into the kitchen area, and they're like, "Oh, happy birthday!" And they got the cake for both of us. It's really nice cake. And man, I remember I was there, but I wasn't there. Like even that was throwing me off. I was just like, "Yo, what the fuck am I in right now?" Like life was like, "Yo, I'm in the matrix for real." You know what I mean? And it was my first spiritual experience, so it was so new, and it was a bit scary because it was like, oh snap, the spiritual world is actually real. I realized at first I was chasing the high of hoping there was something, and then when I actually experienced it, it was so humbling because I realized like, oh snap, the fact that it's real, that actually freaks me out now. I was starting to get what do you call it? Last minute, like, oh damn, I kind of want to go back to when I thought this was still fake. Because this is really real, and now it opens up a can of new questions, a can of new worms, essentially. And so that's what happened. That's why I started to come down from it, because then all these new questions popped up, having to deal with the fact that spirituality was real. And I was like, oh snap. So what about this? Does this mean this? Does this mean that? And I started tripping out. So because of that, I started it started to come back to normal. And I went through, after that experience I was going through for a week, I had to sleep for like 3, 4 days. Like it was like 3, 4 days. I couldn't really function that well. I was very sleepy. My mind was very sensitive. And I said about 4 days, 4 to 5 days, I came back and I was normal again. And then I was like, holy shit. Keep in mind that this was no shrooms. This was no mind altering drugs. This was literally watching a video that hit me with information. And that's when I knew that the sweetest drug is information. And that right there, my journey, I went from there. And it hit a whole nother level because now I knew what was going on. Now I knew that, oh, this is real. Like knowledge really creates a different thing that you're not, you might not be ready for. It's not just people talking. And from there, I mean, I just went on that journey. I had about 3, 4, 5 more of those type of experiences along my journey. When I encounter really high level information, I get really spiritual insights. And now it's been a while, so I'm pretty much attuned. I'm used to it. You know what I mean? But man, I just say that to say, you know, what that did for me as a person, as a coach. You know what I mean? I'm able to really bring different insights, and I'm able to see the world through a different perspective. So what I'll do in my future videos, I continue to give you guys. I had more spiritual experiences that happened through information. So what I'll do is I'll do a part two where I tell you about the next one I had around 25. And it was because I have watched another video years later that hit me with a big realization that blew my mind. And it caused me to start peeping all of this new stuff. And that was like, oh my gosh, what in the world? Like, this goes deep. So that's my video to you all. This one was different than me just giving y'all, information and advice. This is where I want y'all to kind of get an idea of my journey, how I got to this 5D transformations, what it's all about. So I appreciate you all listening. It's the one and only. You already know. If you're interested in any coaching, make sure to check out the Patreon. We got the Pyramid Coaching Program with all of my courses on there. And if you want any one-on-one coaching, you can go to your5dtransformations@gmail.com. Aside from that, I appreciate you. And hey, look, if you watched the video this long, you a real one. That means you either been through it or you're gonna go through it. And I'm telling you, it's so sweet. Even though your mind gets a little sensitive, once you get back, you're stronger than ever. And I tell you, I would never trade that experience for anything in my life. It was one of the most surreal, incredible, beautiful, amazing experiences in my life. And I'm so happy I got to experience it. So that's my message to y'all. I'll see y'all in the next video.